Good afternoon and welcome to SACAP Global's webinar on understanding child and adolescent behavior. I'm your host, Stephanie Dohan, and I am the Content and Events Manager for SACAP. We will have a live Q&A session at the end of our presentation. So should you have any questions during the webinar or just some questions at the end, please feel free to use the Q&A or the chat box located at the bottom of your screen. Without any further ado, I will now hand over to JP.
Thank you so much, Steve. So welcome everybody, good day. If you hear school kids, I'm sorry. I am at the school and practicing at the school. My name is Juan-Pierre Moller. I'm an educational psychologist and I'm also a lecturer at SACAP. So today I'm talking about human development and behavior. And the awesome thing about this is that we're all people, point one. And point two, there are a lot of theories, and I want to make you curious today about the theories. I am close to the airport. Sorry. Okay. So I want to make you curious about all these theories, but I also want to tell you that we are still human and we're still unique. You're unique like everybody else. That is why it can be applied differently to you in your life, and that's what we're starting off with today. So yes, human development and behavior, I'm going to teach you some of the theories and what they are, but then you still have to figure out yourself, but why is this, why is this? Okay, so first of all, there are a lot of things that are currently challenges in South Africa. Thank you, Steve, for the first slide. Okay, so for example, these are a couple of News 24 articles or EWN articles that say no pupils will remain unplaced even if it means overcrowding, says the Popo Education MEC. So that then led to one school having more than 80 plus students per class. There was one mathematics class with more than 300 students in the class. Two siblings handed 3 life sentences each for rape and murder of a toddler. And they were also minors too. Silent treatment refers to intentionally withdrawing from an interaction, refusing to engage further, and shutting off other people. So there was actually silent treatment that were actually one of the highest forms of disciplining or torture in Alcatraz. But now at schools we say people cannot speak, and then we had COVID and we had masks and people weren't allowed to make noise. So we cut people off of the world. Next slide. And therefore we look at other things like Malcolm's around creche, where it was a creche at a church and then the kids were raped at the creche. 2 children die in a shack fire. When we look at the South African suicidal rates, we see that men, South Africa is second, so Russia is first, then South Africa. And South Africa, men are the most. Why? Because men don't speak usually, but some do. And that's why today I'm going to teach you some of the concepts and the theories, but we're all unique, as I said. So as our behavior are different, let's say, for example, you have a parent and he or she was an alcoholic, then you can still decide if you want to be an alcoholic or drink moderately or drink nothing. It's your choice, no matter what your circumstances are. And that's what we're going to talk about today. So now I just want to tell you, with all of this being said, 2 videos quickly on how other countries show their behavior and what is acceptable in their countries as the correct behavior. Thank you, Steve.
Traveler's etiquette. Interaction. When in Germany, remember to greet everybody by shaking hands. That's everyone. In Asia, try to keep your feet under control. Touching somebody or pointing with them is considered the height of rudeness. Talking to a Swede? Then there's no such thing as an awkward silence. Just time to think of the best response. And in Bulgaria, it's not uncommon for people to shake their head for yes and nod for no. Happy travels. Traveler's etiquette. Manners. Exchanging cards in Japan is very formal. Give and receive with both hands. When giving flowers to someone in Poland, make sure they're in an odd number. In France, never discuss money over dinner. It's considered très gauche. And when receiving a gift in China, it's polite to refuse it the first time it's offered. Happy travels.
Okay, so as we see here, there's a lot of diversity in behavior. And what is acceptable behavior versus what is frowned upon. And what is different. And is different always wrong. And that is what we're talking about today. So when we look at the next slide, you will see that we are discussing Bronfenbrenner, who is an old psychologist in the old days, who then looked at the impact of the different ecological systems on a person. So if you look here in the middle, there is the person, and then all around them are the things that impact them. So, for example, if you think about what your closed system does, your friends, family, peers, parents, social media, teachers, then versus the exo, that is more like your mass media, the laws, extended family, things like that. And then if you go in the big system of it all, politics, colorism, cultural things, Black Lives Matter movements, all of these things, this is just a very South African explanation of Bronfenbrenner. But how all of these things have an influence on you as a person who is in the middle. And with all of these influences, you must still be you and figure out who you are, especially while you are in the phases of developing. So when we look at the next slide, we can then see that some of the developmental theories by different people. So Erickson will say, when you're teen years to 20s, you'll be identity versus role confusion. And here's where people start developing like their sexual identity, who they are, what they want to be one day. In your young adulthood, intimacy, want to get married, maybe not, versus isolation, rather be alone, rather become self-independent before you go and get married and things like that. And that's also why the marriage age is going up over 30 these days, average. Middle adulthood, 40 to 60s, and here we can see where some people go through menopause, generative versus stagnation. Are they going to stay the same, or are they going to change? Because they have a midlife crisis, as it's called, because their age expects them to change, okay? Or do they want to stagnate and just be set in their ways? And that also applies for integrity versus despair. And that's why in a story, if you want to teach behavior to children, you'll use the owl as the older one, as the elder in South Africa, as the wise one. So that's how these people are perceived. But does that say that a young psychologist who shaves every day and looks young doesn't know how to be a psychologist because he looks young? Just a question I'm posing out there. Next slide, please, Steve. So then, what is your opinion about maturation? So there's a lot of things here that we look into the identity and the development. So we look at maturation, psychodynamic, how the brain works, psychosocial relationships, cognition, the intercorrelation of the brain and the different parts of the brain, behaviorist, the behavior that's explained, ecological, and then obviously the information processing theory. So all of these are theories that are out there. But what is your opinion about maturity? When is somebody mature? Because now, even in South Africa, we changed the law from 14 to 16-year-old to have full criminal capacity. Where before, on 14, you could have been fully charged with a criminal act. Does it differ between age or between male and female? And how does one measure physical versus emotional maturity? So if some of you want to put in the chat or somewhere, if you want to say, do you think it changed versus age? Do you think versus male versus female? What do you guys think? Okay, life experience maybe. And that's exactly it. The impact of life on you. Age, yes, but experience. I love that answer. Because let's say, for example, in South Africa, you have to raise your brother or sister. What then? Then you are still a brother or sister. You are still fulfilling the role of brother and sister. But because mom has to work late, because she's a lone parent, now you have to look and raise a baby. But you're not a mother age yet. You are still in school. Therefore, you learn mother role work while you are still a child as well and being a student. So yes, definitely. So that's why we measure the EQ, that's your emotional intelligence versus your IQ. That is your cognitive ability, the way that your brain works. And that's the thing, it differs on what is around you. Male versus female, they say males develop slower than females. And we also know that your prefrontal cortex, the front part of the brain, actually only develops between the age of 23 to 25. And they say that most men are actually at 25, where most females are 23. And this is the logical reasoning part of the brain. Therefore, making the smarter choices, the logical reason part. Anyway, we'll leave that part there. But then on the next slide, yeah, and because of more stress as well, it can also make you sometimes regress. Where I have, for example, a student who's currently working with a teddy, and she's grades 10, 11, 12, and it is a place of comfort, a place of safety. So you can regress because of stress as well. But then there are also other type of intersexual people, very interesting, and also at what age do they know? Because some theories say at the age of 3 they know. Very interesting. Okay, but yeah, so if you look at the prenatal versus the infancy, early childhood, middle childhood, and then late childhood, and these are the ages that they prescribe for us in theory. However, it might change for kids in South Africa because we're in different schools. So we say 6 to 12 years old or middle childhood, but we know in primary school we have kids of 13 years old. And then are you mature when you have your first period for a lady? Or is that only physical maturation? And some kids these days have it at the age of 9, 10. And that also changed. So very interesting concept around that as well. The next slide, please. So then they say, so how do we change behavior? And this is Pavlov. He said he rang a bell for a dog. Because the dog saw food, and every time he saw food, he started to salivate. So every time there's saliva, and he's like, I don't like the saliva. So every time that the dog sees it, he's going to give him a fright with a bell. So he's going to associate the food and the bell now with salivating. So at the end of the day, even when he just rang the bell, he still salivated, even without the food. That was the first trigger or the first view them for them to see. So this is what we can do with kids. So we do it through positive and positive reinforcement or negative reinforcement, where we take away some of these things when they are naughty, for example, PlayStation or their phones or time on TV or things like that. But we also can reward them if they do well. And some people do it through money. Some people do it through giving them extra sport time, making them go to their friends or going to the movies or whatever. But whatever works for your child, because for some kids you can give them R1 billion, and I saw this at private schools, where they got so much money, but they weren't happy because they didn't want money. They wanted love, attention. Our kids want to be feeling the love. They want to be felt that they are heard and seen. And that's very important, and it's a difficult thing between the generational gaps to remember that one. Next slide, please, Steve. So here we can see the best thing is communication. When I do talks for this newspaper, I always say in relationships, when there's sexuality talks, always communicate. It's very important. And when we are babies, we also communicate. When we want food, when we are wet, when we're happy, smiles and giggles. Okay, so that's actually where our talking starts. And then when you your mom rewards you with food. Okay, so then every time you see mommy, you become happy because she satisfies your needs. So this is called operant conditioning. Just the thing as with the dog, I just made it now people related. But some people say money, per distinction, ice cream, lollipops, a star chart, or take away their phone. Okay, and these things are visible outside rewards. Okay, so it's called outside, external. Where your internal rewards are like a hug, I love you, a well done from a mom or dad. Those things are people who like you. Those things are important for some of you. Next slide, please. Okay, so then we get a typical attention span that also has an influence on a child, and you can just look at how much minutes you actually can concentrate. And that's why some schools cannot have 2 hours lessons, because the kids don't concentrate. Then also there's a theory called the first 1,000 days, where they say if you do not look after their needs in the first 1,000 days from conceiving, so from becoming a zygote, then kids will lash out and push boundaries where they feel safe. So please remember that, parents. They will lash out where they feel safe with the parent they love the most and feel the most safest with. What you focus on will be stronger. There's a positive and negative wolf inside of you. If you focus on the positive one and feed him and focus on good stuff, that one's going to be stronger and win the negative one. But if a child is neglected in the first 1,000 days from conception, then they might develop mental challenges. Therefore, they can feel the stress inside the mom's body, and that can actually later influence their behavior and also their cognition, the way their brain works. Next slide, please. So, what do you focus on? When we started off with, if you focus on the positive things, it will feel positive. But 4,000 years later, and back now to today, we still use hieroglyphics. So speak to your children in the way they understand. I don't ask for emotions because you don't know the words of emotions, especially in some of our cultures in South Africa. Therefore, show them an emoji and say, which one do you feel like? What does that one mean to you? When do you feel like that? Rather than saying, are you angry? Are you mad? They don't get the words, so rather give them visuals. And you can explain things as beautiful as you want, and there will still be that one person who does it the wrong way, as you can see with that lacquer jumping the hurdles picture. But then there are also kids who then are linguistically super well developed. For example, a boy who speaks 12 different languages, and he was 12 years old. Little Bella, she's 4 and she speaks 7 languages. You can watch all these videos, but depending on what you focus on, you're going to make stronger, you're going to win, and you're going to build that skill. So if you focus on being in a music center, you're going to probably be good with music one day. But if you're not exposed to it, then you can't be measured to it. Next slide, please. So 8 ways that a child's anxiety shows up as something else. It can be anger, difficulty sleeping, defiance, lack of focus, avoidance, over-planning, and negativity. So please remember, they won't always say something is bothering me. They won't say, they will tell me, I feel it's too much, but they can't tell you what is too much. Obviously, then they feel overwhelmed. They don't have the words to say. So break it up for them in steps. There's a mountain. How do we climb a mountain? One step at a time. Next slide, please. So we quickly look at the brain. There are the different parts of the brain and what each part does. And if there is a problem or one of them working slower, we can do neuro diversion, where we actually take another part of the brain to fulfill the other parts of the brain skills. But we can also then see how we can support that kid. Next step, please. But then we can also see, so if people abuse alcohol, if they use meth, marijuana, what it does to the brain. So this is a nice visual with an fMRI to say what gaps it makes in the brain physically and how it also ages your brain. If you look here at alcohol, ADHD, and how it actually puts strain on the brain, actually age it faster. And if you hurt your brain, you cannot recover that part. You actually then have to use other parts of the brain to actually do the skills of that part that is now damaged. Next part. So, before I finish off with my second last one, I just want to ask. So, here are some things that Adler said. Adler said the first ones are perfectionists, achievers, leaders, bossy. The middle ones are adaptable, independent, peacemakers. The last one are social, charming, outgoing. And the only child are confident and conscious. But do you think it's always like this? Is it for you the case that you are like that? Or the only child always sensitive or not? Always when I have this discussion with my classes, they will tell me, no, I'm not like that. I'm a bit of that and not a bit like that. And I'm a bit here and a bit there. Because of life and the circumstances, just as you guys answered in the chat. So thank you for that. Next slide, please. So with all of that being said, no matter what happens in your life, you have a choice to what you become. Your behavior is then portrayed by you and your personality and who you are. It is not always because of a certain thing that a certain thing will happen. If you are raped, it doesn't mean that you're going to rape others. If you are raped, it doesn't mean that you're going to commit suicide. It can also motivate you to not become that. It also can motivate you to teach others on how you dealt with it. You can have a happy, healthy family, or you can commit suicide if the same thing happened to you, for example, rape. So, Dr. Francis said, time, sympathy, and understanding. must be lavishly dispensed, but the rewards is to be found in that personal bond which forms the greatest satisfaction of the practice of medicine. One of the essential qualities of the clinician or of a parent is interest in humanity, in the person. For the secret of the care of the client, of the child, is in caring for the client, for the child. Kids won't just be naughty. There must be a reason why. Hear, listen to them, ask them why. Discipline is helping a child solve a problem. Punishing is making a child suffer for having a problem. And to raise problem solvers, focus on solutions, not retributions. Thank you so much, Dave.
No problem. Well, greetings, everyone. I'm Laila, and today I'm going to be focusing on mindfulness and holistic child development. So let's begin. Looking at the first slide. All right, so the focus of this webinar, and especially my portion, is to discuss the importance of holistic child development, as I've just said in the introduction. And as psychologists or student psychologists who are listening in, we know that a child's early years are critical for their long-term successes in life. However, it's not enough to focus solely on academic achievement or physical health. We need to consider the child as a whole person with unique needs and potentials. Holistic development means nurturing a child's physical, emotional, social, and cognitive development all together. Now, holistic development recognizes the interconnectedness of all these areas and provides children with opportunities to grow and thrive in each of them. This leads to well-rounded individuals who are better equipped to navigate the challenges of life. So when children are given the opportunities to explore their interests and develop a wide range of skills, they are more likely to feel confident and capable in different situations. Now, parents play a crucial role in supporting their child's holistic development. Here are some tips for promoting holistic development at home. You could, number one, encourage your child to explore their interests and passions. This could be through extracurricular activities, hobbies, or simply the magic of free play or imaginative play. You could also foster emotional intelligence by talking to your child about their feelings and helping them to recognize and regulate their emotions. You could also prioritize physical health by making sure your child gets enough exercise, sleep, and healthy food. Or support your child's social development by helping them form positive relationships with their peers and adults. However, as you'll see in the next slide, my discussion today focuses on the benefits of mindfulness for holistic child development. Now, mindfulness. Mindfulness is the practice of being present and fully engaged in the present or current moment without judgment. It's a technique that can be practiced by people of all ages and including children. Now, research has shown that mindfulness can improve mental health, emotional regulation, and overall being. When children learn to be mindful, they are better able to manage their stress, focus their attention, and develop self-awareness. This in turn can lead to improved academic performance, better social skills, and a greater sense of inner peace and happiness. So in the next slide, you will see how us as psychologists and parents can actually endorse such a practice. Moving on to the next slide, as we can see here. So as psychologists, there's many ways we can encourage mindfulness in children. We can help children connect with their inner selves and develop a sense of purpose or meaning. Now, this can be done in various ways, and the form or the actual concept of interconnectedness comes into play right here. Now, you'll be noticing that I use that word interconnectedness quite a bit. What does it mean? It means that everything and everyone in some way or the other is connected to each other. It means that everyone in some way impacts on another or has consequences based on their choices and their actions. Now, just enabling a child to understand this makes a big difference. The one way we can teach this is by allowing a child to just take a seat wherever they are. And by asking them to notice, what are they sitting on? They may say it's a cushion or a chair or a carpet, but who do you think, or where did this cushion come from? Who made this cushion? Okay, and who delivered this cushion, and where did this come from? And did this person actually make it? And this cushion actually took such a life form and traveled such a long way and went through so many hands to develop and to just make it just for you. In that way, a child can understand a concept of we are all connected. As much as, yes, we do have our own concepts of self-awareness, we also need to allow children to understand how they are connected to each other in such a way that they would understand how their choices, their actions, their words and deeds have an impact as well. So that's how mindfulness can help children connect with their inner selves. By cultivating mindfulness, children can connect with their values and beliefs and develop a deeper sense of empathy and compassion for others, noticing that this is my feelings and my thoughts, and that when I actually act on these feelings and thoughts, they can have a consequences on someone else that I do not want to cause harm to. Mindfulness can help children regulate their emotions and reduce stress and anxiety. By learning to be present and aware of their thoughts and feelings, children can learn to respond to them in a healthy and constructive way. I will be showing you techniques later in this webinar to actually show you how these breathing techniques can take place and how you can use them. Mindfulness can also improve children's focus and attention by teaching them to stay present and engage in what they are doing. This skill can help children excel academically and perform better in other areas of life. Most importantly, in the day and age, as where everyone becomes so distracted by a social setting, social media, by gadgets, technology, people, or their surroundings, mindfulness helps us to anchor ourselves in the moment and provides children with the actual tools, verbalization, and understanding of how to anchor themselves in the moment when they feel swept away or carried away by actions, emotions that are actually overcoming their actual ability to make decisions and to move forward. As we will see in the next slide, I will be examining on how mindfulness improves the several areas of holistic development, how it actually can impact. For example, let's take a look at emotional development. Now, mindfulness can help children regulate their emotions by helping them identify and, most importantly, verbalize their feelings without judgment. By practicing mindfulness, children can learn to recognize their emotions and respond to them in a healthier way, which can improve their emotional regulations and resilience. Now, how is this done? Basically, what we need to do is that we have to practice mindfulness in such a way that the child becomes self-aware of their own bodily reactions to their emotional content, their emotional involvement, what they're experiencing. So if they are experiencing an element of anger, what happens to my body when I'm feeling angry? What is happening to my hands? Am I putting them into a fist, for example? Is my breathing going a lot faster? Is my face getting hotter? What does my hands, my face need? Is it something cold? Do I need to relax my fist? And how do I get my fist to relax? Do I take a deeper inhale and hold my breath? And we call this faucet breathing in mindfulness. And it's quite a wonderful tool to have to regulate anger or to allow self-regulation for anger. And the idea is you have to hold your breath tight like a faucet, like a pipe. And you have to actually make your face as animated as possible, either as a parent or as a therapist. And you ask the child to hold their breath and make their face really tight, just exhibiting or actually animating the angry face, the emotion, holding it together. Hold your breath. And then release it up and release your hands and release everything else from your face to your breath, to your hands, and try and relax the hands. And how is the anger feeling now? And then the next breath that they take may not be as strong as the first breath. But what we are doing here is we're allowing children to regulate that emotion of anger, perhaps the emotion of sadness, perhaps understanding this is my feeling, this is what I'm feeling, this is how it's actually affecting my body. This is the effect it is having on my body. What does my body need? What does my body need to feel less strained in this regard? And that's just an example of what we can do. Moving on to the next slide, we will see how mindfulness also can help in cognitive development. Now, this is the way we think. This is cognitive means anything that actually impacts on the way we are thinking, we are managing information, processing information, how we're storing information. So mindfulness can be shown to actually improve attention and memory and cognitive flexibility in children. That's the ability to think outside the box. Now, these skills are essential for academic success and also supports problem solving and decision making in every life. Now, cognitive development or mindfulness in cognitive development is quite interesting. And we almost are living in an era of instant, immediate gratification. And what I find quite helpful in my practice is taking simply a game of drafts. And I'm not sure if you remember drafts or checkers and how it is actually used, and allowing and just playing a game with your client or your child, not allowing them to win, but also noticing when they're feeling frustrated. How do they actually cognitively or logically make a move? Obviously, for older children and teenagers, you can improve this using chess, for example, or using different cognitive games that doesn't just involve board games, but also could involve physical games that allows them to think and solve riddles or puzzles, for example, are really, really good. So these are examples of mindfulness tools that you already have in your homes, in your practice, and that you can use to develop cognitive development. The idea is to get the child or a client to slow down and to be fully present in the moment in order to make clear, conscious cognitive choices. As you will see in the next slide, the next domain where mindfulness does improve holistic development is the social area of development. Now, mindfulness helps develop social skills such as empathy, kindness, and of course, compassion. And it does so by encouraging children to be more attentive and conscious and aware of the feelings and needs of others as well as themselves. But by connecting and by learning to connect with others in meaningful ways, children can improve their relationships with friends and family and the broader community. And where we see this as well is that children also understand the empathy by actually working outside of themselves. This is quite interesting and a quite interesting development here. And as we know in early childhood development, we notice that children have this capacity to be very curious and sometimes judgmental, but more curious about what is this living object, such as you see in this wonderful picture of a puppy and a child holding a puppy. There's not the strive to hurt unless there are greater psychological challenges at risk, but there's also an understanding to connect with this living being, be it an actual animal or a plant or whatever it is, but to connect with this other being outside themselves. Now, this is done quite cleverly in classrooms today that we can see in schools, where there's actually a class plant or a class pet, or children are actually asked to grow something, such as planting something as simple as a bean in soil or a pea in soil, and nurturing and cultivating this life in such a way that they're being very present and mindful of its development, knowing that whatever they do is impacting on the life of this plant. Now, this is a mindfulness activity that can be endorsed very easily in practice at homes with parents or with therapists as well. Looking at the next slide, we're looking at physical development, which is really, really important. Now, mindfulness improves physical health and well-being by reducing stress and anxiety and improving sleep and prompting overall relaxation. Now, these benefits can contribute to better physical health, which impacts positively on all aspects of child development. Now, this is done, mindful exercises are done in a way to calm down out of a stressful event, such as a tantrum or argument, or not just following a significant event. Practicing mindfulness to improve physical development should be done consistently. How do we do this? We can practice mindfulness as a family. This could be through activities like yoga, meditation, or mindfulness walks in nature. Now, if that is inaccessible to you, we have valuable tools and apps that are available to everyone out there. Some apps are free. We get something called .me that can be used by teachers, that can be used by parents, that actually teach children how to meditate and how to use mindfulness practices to encourage the physical development, to encourage meditation, to encourage that understanding of my present non-judgmental awareness. Now, it's really important to endorse this as a family when practicing this as a family, because a family will be speaking in the same language as mindfulness, will be understanding and cultivating an environment that promotes self-awareness, and most importantly, that understands self-regulation, or what the child needs to self-regulate. What it also does is provides parents and children, the household, verbalizations of emotions, of social situations, of physical awareness, so that we can address these needs and challenges. Looking at the next slide. Now, spiritual development. It is very important to understand that there's a massive difference between spiritual development and religious development. I'm focusing purely on spiritual development. Now, spiritual development in this sense is the ability to connect with yourself, to develop a deeper sense of meaning and purpose. Cultivating a sense of mindfulness, children can learn to connect with their values and beliefs, which can promote spiritual growth and well-being. And that's the ability to understand that this idea of interconnectedness of me within myself, my self-awareness, my self-respect, and also the respect of others. It's almost a very humanistic form of well-being. It's almost this unconditional positive regard for myself. And if I can achieve that unconditional positive regard for myself, then I can extend that and include unconditional positive regard for others. Now, spiritual development in children has been shown to create very impactful results in terms of compassion, the development of compassion, the development of understanding, and also the ability for children to be more resilient and to improve the ability to become more impactful in their approach to overcome certain areas of challenges. Now, this alludes to another cue from the IQ and the SQ and the AQ, and that becomes very, very important in understanding our ability to become more resilient. That is the adversity quotient. Now, children with very strong spiritual development, understanding themselves, their abilities and also their limitations, have the ability to improve their adversity quotient, the AQ. And that's your ability to get up from a situation where you have fallen off, where you have failed, where you need to try again and apply your mind again to overcome certain challenges. Now, mindfulness and adversity quotient work quite well together, because by understanding yourself and your abilities and being more self-aware, we are able to become more self-aware or aware of others and to display compassion for ourselves and extend it to others. Moving on to the next slide. All right, so in summary, what are we saying? It's important to know that mindfulness is not a one-size-fits-all solution. Some children may find certain mindfulness techniques more helpful than others. It's important to encourage children to find whatever works best for them and in their best interests. Now, as psychologists, we can also support mindfulness in our work with children. We can use evidence-based interventions such as mindful-based cognitive therapy to help children develop mindfulness skills. We can also work with parents to help them create a mindful environment at home. So mindfulness is a powerful tool for promoting holistic child development. By teaching children to be present and fully engaged in the moment, we can help them develop skills they need to thrive in all aspects of their lives. All right, so holistic development is essential for children because it supports all those dimensions: the physical, the intellectual, the emotional, the social, the spiritual, and much more that becomes developed as they go along, such as the occupational, such as the financial dimension as well. By nurturing all aspects of it, parents as well as their caregivers can help children develop into healthy, well-rounded individuals who are equipped to thrive and to overcome certain areas of challenges that we are bound to face as human beings. Mindful does provide very simple and effective methods that you actually have in your own capacity at home or in your practice. And it does help children develop skills to manage their emotions, to focus their attention, and to connect with their inner selves. So I do hope that this session that I've brought to you in conclusion has provided you with some knowledge about holistic child development and how mindfulness is used as a tool to support this holistic child development. I am very open to any questions that you can pop up in the chat that we can address as soon as Dr. Genevieve is done. And with that, Stephanie, I think I'm ready to introduce our next speaker. Thank you so much for listening to me and for your presence and for your awareness and for being here. And with that, I'm going to leave you with Dr. Genevieve de Silva, who will be discussing turning theory into tools. Over to you, Dr. Genevieve.
Thank you so very much, Dr. Laila. And thank you to all of our panelists that are here today and our participants. It is so wonderful to have you with us as you go through this webinar. So today I want to speak about turning theory into tools. And one of the most amazing things as an educational psychologist, our focus is really on child development and on our learning and development over a lifetime. And so being here today, being open to learn, that's just something that we're involved in within this space. And so how do we take what we're learning and turn it into something practical, something that we can use every day with the children that are in our lives, whether we are parents, whether we are teachers, whether we are practitioners? How do we take what we are gleaning from today? Perhaps you are considering, I saw in the chat, some people considering further studies, maybe taking part of the micro courses offered by SACAP. But how do we take what we learn and make use of it? And so as we go over to the first slide, as I was thinking about today's presentation, I remembered an incident that happened over December when I was with my boys at my mother's house. And because we visit, she's in a different town to us. We arrived there and all of their toys are there ready for them to play with, and they're excited because they haven't used it in a long time. But as they took out their little remote control cars, they realized that they weren't working properly. Something was wrong, something was getting jammed, this one wasn't turning on. And of course they turned to me and they're like, "Mommy, can you fix it?" And I am a psychologist, I am not a technician, but I had a look at these little remote control cars and asked my mom, "Do you have tools?" And surprisingly she did. In the garage, pulled them out. And there I sat with the screwdriver set, these cards in my hand, and started to opening them up to see what was going on inside. And it reminded me a little bit of a 1990s show, and I'm giving away my age. In the 1990s, I was a child. A show called MacGyver. I know they've remade it. And so over on the next slide, MacGyver is just so well known in these shows because he can tackle any difficulty with just 3 things. And so in the next slide, the images will come up. He can take on any problem with duct tape, a Swiss Army knife, and a book of matches. Just 3 simple tools, and he is able to rectify any problem and save the day. But it's not just the tools he had on hand, it was his unique insight into physics, chemistry, and combat. And so really what we want to do is, as we are learning and developing, it's taking what we know, mixing it in with what we have, and coming up with creative ways to engage a problem and find a solution. So over on the next slide, there is this quote from William Butler Yeats, and it says, "Education is not the filling of a pail, but rather the lighting of a fire." See, our success in learning as adults, and even for the children that we work with in their development, success is not just about acquiring knowledge. It's not about filling the pail, but it's found in the creative application of it. How can we use this? If we think about fire, it's just a spark and it lights a flame, but that flame has got so much potential and so much use in different aspects, whether that is cooking, whether that is creating light. It can be quite destructive as well when it's let loose and out of control. And that's the same with what we learn and the knowledge that we gain. It's what we do with it that really matters. And so for anybody that is in education, you might recognize this next slide, which is Bloom's taxonomy. And really what Bloom did is to create this levels of how we can assess learning. So whenever we're learning, whenever engaging in education, what is it that we do with this? And as teachers, and this is where teachers would recognize this from, how do we actually assess what our children are learning? And so he put together the strategy to be able to assess what are children learning and how are they engaging learning. And what you can see is that the bottom rung of this ladder of learning, as I like to call it, is remembering. Just getting information and remembering information is actually the first step in learning. But as you go higher, we see that it's understanding what we're learning and then applying what we're learning. And that is really crucial. How do we take what we learn? How have we taken what we've heard today in the first 2 sessions? What can we do with it? How do we apply it? But more than that, we can actually take it and analyze it, ask questions about it, weigh it up against other things that we are seeing and observing. We can evaluate it. And ultimately, we want to be able to do something with it, something unique to this moment in time or this problem, and create something new. And so ultimately, as we are sitting here learning today together, but as we're working with our students, as we're working with our own children at home, as we're working in our practices, for those who are practitioners in different forms, how do we take what we know and create something new with it to work with the different unique individuals that we have in our space? And so if I think about it, our learning, we can absorb and take in information, or we can use information. It's almost like money. We can earn money and just stuff it under our bed, or we can earn money and we can invest it and spend it well and actually use it to be impactful beyond the here and now into our futures and even into future generations. And so on the next slide, if we think about how do we take our learning, we can ask ourselves some questions. What do I know? What do I have? And what can I do with it? And I think if this is our attitude as adults, as we continue in our learning and development over a lifelong period, and we're able to help our children that are in our spaces to ask these questions as well through their learning and development, we would have them create the sense of, I want to learn, I want to grow, I want to develop, and I want to take what I'm learning in my tools and effectively use them in my everyday. And when we can effectively use what we've learned in our everyday, we're able to navigate life and the challenges that life throws at us. So let's go over to the next slide and start with, what do I know? And so we've spoken today in the different topics previously about different theories, different domains, and different stages of development. And so when it comes to working with children, what do we know? What does theory tell us about children? And so there are various theories that help us to understand how children develop over time, how we as people develop over time or interact with one another over time. We've learned about the different domains, and Dr. Laila brought those out in her mindfulness, speaking about mindfulness in the areas of emotional development, cognitive development, spiritual development, physical development. These are the different aspects that make us human and how they integrate and interconnect with one another. And then, of course, we have these different stages. As time goes by, we recognize that there are stages of development that we can recognize across different people and across different time. And so if we stop and ask ourselves, what do I know? When we have a child that we are working with, or a child at home that we are parenting, or a child that we are teaching in a classroom, when we bring these things together and observe this child, we find the unique factors that are present to them. And we are then able to engage them where they are at in their development. If we go over to the next question, in the next slide, what do we have? We start to have a look at things like, what are the personal strengths that we have as individuals, but what are the personal strengths that the child has in front of us that they come with as they engage their life and their learning and growth journey? We also can ask ourselves, what relationships are present for this child and around myself as I'm working with this child? And JP had spoken about Bronfenbrenner's theory about how we are constantly being influenced and how we are influencing at different levels around us. Relationships are so crucial to what we are able to do and how we are able to engage children and work with them. And just in our own life and how we are working and developing constantly. So if we ask, what do we have? We can look at personal strengths within the child, within ourselves. If we look at relationships, who are the other children in the class, perhaps, that are part of this problem, but also part of the solution? What about others that surround this child? What are the support structures that I have around myself in order to equip myself to manage or engage this? Do I have friends? Do I have relationships that help stabilize me as I'm engaging with the children around me? And then what resources do we have? What are the learning tools that we have around us? Or what are the tools that we have available to us in our classrooms or at home or in our community? One of the biggest resources that we have, and often we forget about, is time. Time is a resource. And if we're so aware of that as a resource, utilizing it well is essential. And I think coming back to what Dr. Laila had to say, in mindfulness, it's being present. Being present in the time now is so intensely crucial, because we then make good decisions, wise decisions that will have long-term impact in the use of our time. Being able to manage ourselves, that is a great resource. We as teachers, we as parents, we as practitioners, as a person, we are a resource to the people, to the children especially, that we are working with. And so if we are able to manage our own processes and are aware of our own internal regulation and are developing life skills, what we are learning, what we are interacting with our children, what we are showing them and how we engage life actually becomes a tool and a resource to them. We become a resource. And I think about one of the theorists, Vygotsky. He speaks about helping children through a zone of development. And so we come along as role players with our children, where we actually help them go from what they are unable to do to what they can do with assistance. And we help transition them through that, from what they're able to do through what they can't do, to develop new skills to be able to take on new challenges. And so when we see ourselves as a resource to our children, if we are learning and we are growing and we are developing and we are asking these questions, what am I constantly learning? What do I have available to me? And then what can I do with it? We actually are able to help to navigate and teach them to manage and navigate life as well. And then another resource, our ears, our eyes, our entire body. How are we listening? How are we observing? What are we learning as we are with the people with us? Because in the moment, if we are just aware, we are able to identify other unique tools and bring these things together so that we can influence and create solutions for some of the difficulties that we face as you're working with our children. So if we go over to the next slide, what do I know? What do I have? But what can I do with it? And this is where, if we take the unique factors of the child, that first part, what do I know? All of those theories, all of those stages, the expectations that I know about what's going on in this life stage for this specific person or this specific class that I'm working with. And I take the factors and connect it with the unique tools, those things that we have, our relationships, our resources, who we are as a person, our personal strengths, and we bring them together with some creative application. How do we troubleshoot, or how do we problem solve, or how do we, use these things in new ways? Then we're able to identify some unique solutions. And so some of the unique solutions that we can maybe have a look at, that we can take from what we've learned today and from psychology specifically, how do we put these into some practical tools? And so if we go to the next slide, one of my favorite tools to use is something called a metaphor. And what metaphors do is it's taking a very abstract concept and connecting it with something that is concrete, that a child, even us as adults, are able to recognize and connect with. So for example, this image here is talking about the ocean as a metaphor for life. If we're out on the ocean on a boat, there are waves, we go up and down. And the reality is that when we are in a down moment, then we need extra power to kind of get over that edge of the wave in order to get to a more stable moment or a stable part of life, or something where we're feeling on top of the world again. The other thing with ups and downs is that it's momentary. It's not forever. It is a season, and some seasons are long, some seasons are short. We're able to decide what is within our control and what's outside of our control. If we look at the boat, steering, managing, controlling the boat is well within the ability of the person on the boat, but there are things outside of their control, like other boats or the weather or even the water. And so using a metaphor like this, we can help children to engage, interact with what is the reality of life that I'm facing, what is in and outside of my control, what are all the different elements that I'm struggling with that is actually happening here, decisions, emotions, other people, etc. And then what are the resources available? How do I recognize what is there for me? Now, not all kids will connect with the ocean. If we're living inland, this might be a bit difficult, but find something that you connect with or your children can connect with, something that is always available to them, something that they're engaging with in life. For myself, I wrote a book recently on parenting, and I've used the metaphor called journeying together. How do we go on travels together, whether it's road trips or walking together, taking the taxi together? Everybody knows how to have a journey with somebody, and it's an incredible metaphor to deal with different things as parents and as practitioners. And so what is it that your kids are able to connect with in their current life? What are they watching? How are they engaging with their friends? What is something out on the playground? Find a metaphor, even an animal, a bee. What can we use very practically in order to help them engage with these very abstract things that they are dealing with every day? If we go to the next slide, we can use movement. We can create this connection between body and mind. And again, coming back to what Dr. Laila was speaking about in mindfulness, it's just realigning all of our systems as a person, all of those domains together. Our physical, our emotional, our cognitive, our spiritual. How do we bring everything in alignment with one another, that they're working together to tackle or to face whatever challenges we might be facing, and to help steer us towards well-being and making or living within the space of well-being where things are available to us to navigate the challenges of life. And so something as simple as yoga or calm down yoga positions and techniques are great to use throughout the day. So at home in the morning, in getting ready and being part of your morning routine, if we just need to take a moment and pause and breathe and do some stretches before we leave the door, so that we start our day in the frame of mind ready to tackle what lies ahead. Perhaps in class, teachers, your kids are getting a little bit wiggly and squiggly, not engaging the learning content. Why not take a pause and have a brain break and do some stretches? Let's stretch up tall like a tree. Let's bend over and stretch out so that we can remember about being friendly, or like little owl there, being wise. Let's build that pose to be wise. Just something along the lines to get the kids moving and adapting. If we don't have enough space, sometimes body percussion is also great, where we create rhythms with our hands, with our bodies, so that we create music and rhythm and movement. This is great for reading. We use rhythm in reading. And so again, we can actually use our bodies to create this alignment again. Other things we can use is helping our kids just engage in elements of self-care, helping them to make decisions, autonomy, giving them choice. What do you want to wear? Do you want to do this activity first or this activity first? But we need to get them all done in homework time. Giving chance to play. Play is not just about toys. Play is the freedom to experience the world through our senses and to make sense of it. And so allowing children to play in their different roles and forms, whether that's at school, having a moment at their desk where they can engage their peers in play, to take a bit of a brain break, or to solidify concepts that we've already learned. Creating games that we can do in the moment right there. And so there's so many ways that we can help our kids to engage the world around them, body and mind, and all of the elements in between, very practically. On the next slide, there are some other elements that we can look at in terms of our emotions and our actions and aligning them together. And so things like that is being able to recognize that these are the emotions that we are feeling and aligning them with our values, aligning them with what we are feeling. If you look just in the middle there, after the word values, there's these fill-in words there. When I feel, I will. Something like that is just physically helping a child to be able to verbalize what's going on inside of them. This is what's happened. This is what I feel about it. And this is what I'm doing, or this is what I want to do with that. And so we're able to help them connect what has happened with the emotion and the resulting action, but also helping them to make decisions as to better actions if they keep on falling into these moments where they are acting without thinking and creating challenges for themselves. Ladies mentioned the breathing exercises, the forced breathing, which is really helpful. A gratitude journal, helping kids to be grateful, to recognize what is actually good in their lives. That is a very practical, tangible thing that we are able to do. And then making use of characters, that comes back to the metaphors. What characters do they know in their everyday life that we can help them associate positive feelings or decision-making or tools that they have available to them with things that they enjoy? If we go to the next one quickly, I want to speak about some last things we can put into place. What resources are available to us? So on the next slide, what's really important is that sometimes we can get caught up with having, we need a lot of money or a lot of physical resource to be able to engage our kids. But the reality is we can use everyday resources. If we have access to computers and internet and printers, we can go online and we can print out really great tools. This one with Minecraft, engaging kids with something that they know, a game. But really what it is helping them to recognize different levels of emotion, from when we're calm to when we're completely out of control, and everything in between. But you don't have to print something. You can draw something or make something. And so my son told me about his teacher who has a little ladder that she's put onto the blackboard to talk about decision making, about making good decisions and the good consequences that come from that, or making poor decisions and the poor consequences that come from that. And all she did was take a paper and make it into a ladder with these different levels to help her kids see, you're doing well, but you're making some poor choices. Let's change that. If we continue, we're going to end up with some consequences. That's not okay. And so we can be very hands-on just by doing things or making things at home with pen and paper, drawing things out. Hopscotch. We can make something, but we can take chalk and draw something and have our kids jumping. Instead of numbers, put different emotion faces if you want to help them recognize emotion. If we have children that have sensory sensitivities, sometimes they need to use their body and engage their senses. Some of them need to calm down. Some of them need movement. Some of them need quiet. Some of them need noise. When we're with them, we can help them recognize what it is that they need. And so this baby has a lot of sensory things around them. But if you think about you as a person, you can also be a resource in terms of sensory sensitivities as well. Again, we are the best resource, not just what we have or what we can create, but we are the best resource, our creativity. And so if we need to engage our kids, what do we have that we can use? Do we have board games? Well, let's use them. If we don't have board games, let's draw something on a piece of paper. If we don't have a piece of paper, let's go outside and play in the sand and use the sticks and the stones to engage them. It's taking what we have, mixing it with what we know, and then asking, what can I do with this? That actually creates the space where we are able to engage our children no matter where we are, classroom, in therapy, or at home, and to be able to take what we use in our terms of our knowledge and turn it into something practical, creative, and useful in order to resolve some of the issues and difficulties, or help our kids resolve issues and difficulties and challenges that they are facing. And so I would like to end with Brian Tracy on the next slide, and his quote, and he says this, that those people who develop the ability to continuously acquire new and better forms of knowledge that they can apply to their work and lives will be the movers and shakers in our society for the indefinite future. And so I want to encourage you, thank you for joining us today, because you have taken that step to gain more knowledge, to learn something new. But let me encourage you as well, take what you're learning and say, how do I use this? How do I apply this? If we can be lifelong learners who are always asking the question of, what can I do with this? How do I apply this? How do I creatively make things better? And we're able to transfer that to the children we work with. What we're doing is we're setting them up for success, where they're constantly asking, what do I know? What do I have? And what can I do with it? And these are incredible tools to be able to navigate the challenges of life and engage the challenges of life and move towards well-being. And so if I come back to the moment that I was in my parents' house with all of these broken cars, after a good number of hours, realizing that somewhere deep down, I have a little bit of knowledge about physics, I was able to fix my boys' cars, and I had very happy boys for the rest of the holidays. And it was simply just me taking a moment and saying, what do I know? What do I have and what can I do with this? My encouragement to you is, as parents, teachers, educators, practitioners, what do you know? What do you have? And what can you do with it? And together, we can be influential on the children that we work with. Thank you so much for joining us today. I'm going to hand back to Stephanie.
Thank you so much. Thanks so much to all our speakers. Thanks so much for sharing. We have gone a little bit over time, so we won't do our live Q&A as we would have loved. However, still feel free to pop your questions in the Q&A box and our panelists will respond to them. For anybody asking about Dr. Genevieve's book, it is called A Journey Together. If we can learn to journey well, we can equip our children to journey better. Have a wonderful day further. And again, thanks to our panelists.